Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on where you are on the globe, and welcome to this second session of the Centre for Digital Trade Innovation Digital Trade Conference. Thank you very much indeed for dialing in promptly. My name is Nick Davis. Just for those of you who don't know me, I'm the director of the Centre for Digital Trade and Innovation. And I'm just here to welcome you to this session before I hand over to the moderator and our panel. Just before we do that, I'd like to say thank you very much to our sponsors, Arkit and Trade Secure, and TraxPay as our silver sponsors, and then eDocs Online, XDC Trade Network, Primer Trade, and WaveBL as our bronze sponsors, and Deloitte as the hosts for our in-person session tomorrow. For those of you who dialed in for this morning's first session, you'll have heard that the tools that we need for digitalization are very much in place. And the focus of this whole conference is about actually using those tools now to advance the take-up and adoption of digital trade processes across the globe. But in order to make that happen, we do need to engage the entire trading community. And while a lot of the focus is on the tier one suppliers and companies and the OEMs and the multinational enterprises, the big brand names, we are very keen not to forget the 99% of businesses who trade internationally who are small to medium enterprises. And how we do that and what are the practical needs of that community are very much the focus of this session coming up. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Mark Ling, the head of trade and working capital at Santander, who will moderate this session and introduce you to our distinguished panel of guests. Over to you, Mark.
Great, thank you very much, Nick, and welcome everybody. So I see we've got 117 participants, so good, a good number, and I'm sure more will join over the coming minutes. So I've got a great panel, lots of expertise representing lots of different facets of the ecosystem, but importantly also different continents. So we've got people from the UK, people from the EU, people from Africa, all providing different perspective and insights as to what's happening in their various parts of the ecosystem. So here at Santander, we're very, very focused on the SMEs. We're doing a lot of work with our Santander Navigator, which is part of our digital offering to SMEs. But we've also, for the last 7 years, been running a biannual survey of 1,000 businesses, mostly SMEs, looking at what are the challenges, barriers, and opportunities to doing and increasing trade internationally. And always in the top 3 of challenges to businesses, that the things that the most challenging to them are access to talent, managing bureaucracy and logistics, managing bureaucracy, but also then transport and logistics, which fit perfectly with our agenda. So anybody who would like to see and have more details about our trade barometer, please get in touch with me after this event, and we're actually just about to release another version that also not only includes UK businesses but also some other countries. So without further ado, let's start making some introductions. So I've got David Dixon from Made Smarter. I've got Kate Foster from the Federation of Small Businesses. I've got Geraldina Iraheta from Digital Catapult. I've got Luca Galbiati from Abacor, and I've got Eric Syria from Trademark Africa. So what I'm going to do is get each of those individuals to just give you a quick introduction to themselves, their roles, what their interests are, and then we'll go into a more detailed conversation with each of them, and then we'll go into a broader kind of discussion, and then finally we'll have at least 10 minutes for Q&A. But don't wait. If you've got questions, put them into the Q&A box, and we will endeavour to respond to as many of those as possible within the the allocated hour that we've got. Okay, so let's kick off. So David, hopefully you're there and you're off mute and on screen, but would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and your particular role and interest in the with the Made Smarter project lead?
Yeah, no problem. Thanks very much, Mark, and good afternoon, everybody. So my name's David Dixon. I've worked in digital now for around about 25 years, both as advisor, coach, and program manager as well. Mainly in the startup arena, but more so as the sector's moved on, more in the scale-up side of things too. I've also worked as a non-exec director on a couple of businesses. More recently, done a bit of international work with a training provider that I worked at. So we did a lot of work in the MENA region. So I know how difficult it is to do international trade, albeit on the services side. And then very recently was fortunate enough to be asked by Nick Davies to get involved with C4DTI and the ICC through running an SME research project, which was basically run to try and understand the market dynamics of customers' awareness of digital trade, the Electronic Trade Documents Bill/Act, and how people felt they would be able to utilize those new tools. And then very recently, I've got a new role, which is looking at manufacturers and helping them digitally transform. And when you look at internationalization from a UK perspective, 50% of the market is manufacturing exports. So working within the Made Smarter arena now is a really good place for me to help them digitally transform in order to hopefully help them digitally trade. Been involved in a couple of startups, and that's me.
Great, thank you, David. Amazing amount of expertise and experience, but also involvement in different areas that are, spot on for this particular topic. So good stuff and welcome. So next, Geraldina.
Good afternoon. I'm Geraldina Iraheta, and I am with Digital Catapult and an expert in cross-sector digital innovation. So we are the UK leading authority on advanced digital technologies. And our role is not only to bring our technical experience to companies on some of the challenges that we've been talking to before now around the adoption of digital to be able to enhance the processes, in this case, across borders in the supply chain, but also to be able to bring the network of more than 10,000 tech innovators and startups to help those SMEs on how do they adopt the right digital technology to be able to fulfill some of the demands of the tier 1 companies that they are working with. So our remit is around the UK, regionally across the north, the east, the west, and the south, but also to help support the drive of upskilling the UK manufacturing supply chain. In the programs around Made Smarter, as we just heard about, our program is the Made Smarter Digital Supply Chain Hub. And most recently, we're proud that we have secured a new program. And how do we take this at an international level with the support of Innovate UK, but also in collaboration with the ICC and Nick Davies around this? And how do we help with these new regulations? How do we help through digitalization? How do we bring a selection of different products and services in the digital space to answer some of those challenges? How do we exploit the knowledge that we have in the innovator community in the UK to be able to accelerate that adoption and increase competitiveness for businesses around trade globally? So that's me. Thank you, Mark.
Great, thank you very much, Geraldine. I'm looking forward to hearing more about the Digital Catapult. I first came across it with all the work that I do with the Scale Up Institute and their focus on helping companies digitize as well, but also a big focus on exporting companies as a sign of success for a scaling up business. So welcome. So next we have Luca, who's I forget, Luca, it's Geneva, I think, somewhere in Switzerland you're dialing in from. So welcome, and if you come off mute and then give us an introduction.
Thank you, Mark. Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, so my name's Luca Galbiati. I'm one of the directors and founders of Abacor Limited. Abacor is a UK-based bagged sugar trading company. So our focus is very much, as I just explained, is sourcing and supplying high quality bagged sugar from across the globe and into, again, across the globe, although predominantly into the EU and the UK at the moment. We have a very small but highly efficient team based out of London who cover the ground very effectively. We are a small, an SME as per the definition, although we always find that we actually punch well above our weight in terms of reach and in certain cases in certain numbers and turnover especially. We are very excited to be on this panel because we really believe that there is great scope to use in terms of trade digitization and facilitating everything around trade finance, because that has been the biggest hurdle for us as a business. Having started 10 years ago, 3 of us or 4 of us with very small capital and being able to grow to a £50 million business this year with very little support, although in recent years, as we will discuss, I'm sure, through the panel, with the support of some companies through trade digitization and electronic bills of exchange, which is very exciting and very good change for us and other SMEs out there.
Great, thanks, Luca. Well, it's good good to have the voice of the SME on the panel here, and particularly for me, I've had a bit of background with Sukden and Zarnaco and British Sugar in my career, so the sugar industry is one I'm have some familiarity with, so be interested in your perspectives here. Okay, and then we move on to membership organisations. So Kate, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mark. Hi, everyone. I'm Kate Foster. I am from the Federation of Small Businesses, which does what it says on the tin. We are a membership organisation across the whole of the UK, and we represent SMEs and the self-employed. So what we do is we provide a number of business services to our members, but where I sit is within our policy and advocacy team. So my role is primarily government facing, and I talk to government in the UK and also overseas to relay the issues that members come to us having experienced with trade. So Mark, you mentioned the issues that come out in your barometer. The issues that we hear about from members when it comes to trade very much chime with that. It's the time and the bureaucracy that it involves. It's the cost, whether that's upfront costs or cumulative costs throughout the process, and it's also the skills required to be able to navigate it. So my role is mainly talking to government about putting in place trade and other policies that make trade easier for small businesses to navigate, and also putting in place the right sort of support to help businesses.
Fantastic. So that agenda with influencing government is really key. So I've been delighted with the work that the ICC have done over the last few years. First of all, with the Digital Bills Act, but also now with the Centre for Digital Trade and Innovation, but also other work streams going on. And it's probably the only organisation that we could get globally to have the voice of the customer, the voice of industry, and have a good reputation with various governments and regulatory bodies around the world. So I think we're all in the right space with the right organisation trying to lead from the front and get us to all collaborate together, which for me is the key word of today. So and then finally, Eric, not least, calling in from Africa. Welcome. Hope you're still there and your system's holding.
Yes. Thanks. My name is Eric Sirali. I'm the director for digital trade at Trademark Africa. Trademark Africa is not-for-profit organization. We are aid for trade development agency. Currently Currently, we operate in 14 countries in Africa, East, a little bit of South, Central, West, and the Horn of Africa. We've been supporting both government and private sector to develop trade policies, build physical trade infrastructure, work with SMEs, and we've done this since 2010. We've managed to mobilize funding of worth over about $1.5 billion worth of programming for the last 13 years or so. My area of specific interest is digital trade, which I've been doing to slightly more than 14 years. I've seen the digitalization of many government entities, customs, different authorities that issue different trade documents, ports authorities, corridor coordination authorities. We've also worked, I've overseen projects with the private sector targeting women, SME projects targeting small businesses participating in e-commerce, and many other digital initiatives. So I'm happy to be part of this conversation, and I'm sure I'll be able to share insights from Africa as well.
Great, Eric, and that having a different continent's perspective for this conversation is really key, particularly as Africa's got a huge diversity in terms of SMEs, from the farm growers to manufacturing, etc. So very, very key, and I think it will be an increasingly important trading continent for the rest of the world, with some of the other geopolitical issues that we are faced with today. So welcome, Eric. So just a very quick background to me. So I'm a career international banker, been with Santander for the last 10 years and been driving the development of our international business, trade business in particular, but a broader how we help businesses trade internationally, how we help them grow, how we help them save time, how we help them save money. The last 2 points there, digitalization is absolutely critical. Yeah. So I spend probably 30-40% of my time dealing with financial crime compliance now. That will only get better as we digitize. And the other thing I do is I chair working groups in UK Finance, which is the UK banking industry industry body, where again we're focused on how we can help, particularly the SME, but basically my area is about international trade on that, leading committees in that group. So hopefully you can see you've got a very good, diverse panel here, and we'll get into the meat of really what can be done now. So we know we've got the changes, certainly in the UK in terms of regulation, and some other countries are leading, and the UK is helping, particularly the ICC, helping other countries move forward with their equivalent of the Digital Bills Act. So that's to be welcomed. But it's really now about, when there's no one silver bullet that just makes all this stuff happen. We've got a very diverse ecosystem, lots of different players, lots of different sizes of businesses. We've got to connect to multinational companies who've always had their own particular agendas, but the viability and sustainability of supply chains now is so key around the world. So, I think we're at a tipping point where people are going to get behind the agenda. But for everybody, it has to be, well, why am I doing this? Why is it important to me? So there's some big numbers about the savings that can be made, some big numbers about the increase in trade that could be made, but it's got to be relevant and real to individual companies. So that's the bit we're going to start getting into in terms of how all of the people on this panel are involved in that kind of process. So I'm going to turn back and again, going in a similar order to the introduction. So I'm going to go back to David and your the involvement and work that you're doing now. So can you tell us a bit more about what you're doing? What are the challenges, but what you see as the opportunities, and what you're seeing as some of the quick wins?
Yeah, so it's probably worthwhile stepping back about 13, 14 months when I was corralled by Nick Davies to help ICC and C4DTI with some market research. So we conducted that over a 6-month period, and we came up with some challenges and some opportunities as well. And from that, we've done some primary research and also some secondary research to back these things up. And I think we've broadly found similar things over the course of working with C4DTI, and other people are saying the same things across the country. So in terms of my role at the moment, I work on the Made Smarter project, which fundamentally is digital transformation within the manufacturing industry. So what we do there is we first of all evangelize about the benefits of transformation. Well, first and foremost, what is transformation? That's the first thing we need to articulate. But once we've done that, we then work with clients on a bespoke program, which includes some one-to-many workshops, but also one-to-one coaching, advice and support from me, with access to grants and capital as well, to allow them to make those changes. And fundamentally, why does that fit in with digital trade? Well, 50% of trade from the UK is manufacturing led. So if we increase digital adoption and transformation within manufacturing, we're going to make a huge disproportionate increase, I think, in benefits to the UK using digital trade, and the Electronic Trade Documents Act as the enabler. But specifically in terms of challenges and opportunities, I think there's a number of camps that can fall into. In terms of the opportunities, the trust, I don't know which of my colleagues on the panel mentioned, but trust is a big thing here in terms of once we've got visibility from beginning to end of a product or a service lifecycle, it's going to add so much value, both in terms of those who fund transactions, those ensuing transactions, but also allowing those companies at either end to trust each other more. There's also the credibility and the increase in efficiencies within the business, therefore the money, and also the time that's going to be saved by hopefully taking full advantage of digital trade. So for me, that's kind of the catch-all. Underneath that, in terms of the threats is probably the wrong word, but it's the word I can only think of at the moment. But awareness is a big problem. So the research we've identified quite early on that people weren't aware of the Electronic Trade Documents Bill / Act, and even if they were aware of it, what does it actually mean to them? So therefore, there's no context to them. Therefore, in effect, it's just a piece of legislation that is another one that goes through the system. Clearly, it means a hell of a lot more than that, but we need to get better at explaining that to Joe public, for want of a better phrase. The other threats that I see on the horizon is access to capital to allow people to transform their businesses, because it's not cheap, both in terms of time and also money and expertise that you're going to need to likely buy in to help you make those changes. And even if you are going to make those changes, there's an issue with the credibility of supply chain, because it's in effect a brand new way of operating. The suppliers within this space, how credible and trustworthy are they? And are they going to be within my sphere in terms of being able to afford them to come and help me? Or am I doing this alone? If I'm doing it alone, what is the support around me to help me do that alone? Which then leans into the training and development side of things. That a lot of companies, particularly business owners, first and foremost, need to understand the opportunities. But then when it comes to embedding digital transformation and trade into your strategy, we've then clearly got to have that transcending through each one of the businesses, and the training and development that comes with that is going to be huge in, first of all, implementing, but then secondly, adapting. There's the whole readiness to the whole digital trade agenda. Most businesses are not aware of the difference between digitalization and digital transformation. And because they are conflated, people have a different perception of, well, I'm digitally trading, I'm digitally ready, should I say, so I'm able to trade. Yes, you've got a couple of spreadsheets, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you're digitally transforming your business and operating efficiently and effectively, or as much as you can do, to then make use of the act and start trading with people abroad at hopefully a price that benefits them and you. And underpinning all that is trust all the way around, trusted advisors. We need that. We need trusted intermediaries. I think a great role for rolling this out is with the trusted organisations in society. That's banks, accountants, lawyers. All these organisations are in really trusted and privileged positions. And I think getting the messages out through these organisations and providing toolkits to allow these organisations to help their clients, but also point their clients in the direction of help, I think would be very useful too.
Great. There's a lot to unpack there, David, and we won't be able to do that in an hour, as we know, right? But I just picked out there, awareness, context, access to capital, readiness, digitalization, transformation, trusted advisors. The whole thing about secure systems and interoperability is really fundamental when you're talking about a global ecosystem and all of the different participants in it. So, Geraldina, let's come to you. You Digital Catapult, you're engaged with a huge number of businesses already, but can you tell us what sort of journey you're on, what your focus is, how it connects to this particular agenda?
Let me talk about an example just to make it a little real, right? So you heard David talk about some of the challenges that they have, and digitalization is one. And one of the things that we know by working with a number of different types of stakeholders and companies is that SMEs are a different level of data maturity. And some have started to capture some level of data in their systems. Some only have, like David was saying, spreadsheets where they're capturing some of the digital information. And others have more advanced systems that will be key to enable them to make the digital solutions more simple and more usable, because they need to be able to see a return on investment if they are going to adopt some of these tools. So one of the examples we have is we work with an SME that's based in the Northeast called Dyer Engineering. And their issue was being able to have visibility of their suppliers and whether orders were arriving and if they had been delayed. They worked with one of our tech innovators, an AI company called Kavita, who provided an intelligent order visibility solution to Dyer so they could better plan work into their factory, assess risks and reduce delays, inventory, and also increasing customer service. This simple solution from this AI company, very small startup, is now, through the work that they've done with Dyer, is now quickly being adopted by other SMEs. So what happened is that we were able to disseminate those learnings, disseminate the challenge for others to be able to adopt a digital tool that's easy, transparent, and they can partner with other organizations. And one of the things that I would say around digitalization and innovation is it's a collaborative approach. Not one company will have the solution, but it's how you learn from others around the challenges that you have are not unique to an SME, but are unique to many of the SMEs, and also who you collaborate with and adopt solutions that already work out there in the market. And this is the role that we play as Digital Catapult, is being able to expose, so what are those different digital solutions that we already have in the 10,000 SMEs that I referred to before, and how do we bring that into answering and addressing some of the challenges around digitalization with the SMEs around the supply chains. And I hope that helps illustrate some of, how you address some of those challenges.
Yeah, thanks, Geraldine. I think, this, I think it was mentioned before by David, but, the trusted advisor is really key. So if you've got the Digital Catapult helping an SME work out, who are those trusted advisors, because it depends on the size of the SME, but a lot owning managed business, they haven't got the skill set or the bandwidth necessarily to work it out. So that collaboration across sectors, across industry, and with, not-for-profit organizations like yourself is really, I think, quite fundamental. So, other key things I think you said about easiness, transparency, really quite key. So thank you for that as a starter, Geraldina. So let's get the voice of the customer. Luca, sorry. What are you doing at Abacor? How do you see this transforming your business or helping you to grow, save costs, provide more security in your supply chain?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been one to try and push, the envelope in terms of investment in digitization, both from the trade finance point of view, which we can touch upon, but also from a shipments management or an ERP system, so to speak. I had my previous experience was at Zarnico, as well. So you mentioned Zarnico, that's where we were before, many moons ago now, where they were implementing CRM systems. And one of the big frustrations was these systems only really work if people actually want to adopt them. So now where the business is my business with my two fellow directors, and we're a small team, it's much easier for us to make decisions in terms of investment in be it software or taking decisions such as funding transactions through digital bills of exchange, or electronic bills of exchange, because we're a much more nimble and small organization, and we can take these risks in inverted comma, and I say push the envelope and be a bit of a disruptor. Geraldina and David, I think the word, absolutely, the word is the trust, and trusting the partners on this journey. In the example where we funded some transactions using these electronic bills of exchange, it really wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the support of Merkel, who really explained to us step by step exactly how everything worked. And not just to us, but also to our supplier, who is across the world. So to be able to provide concise and trustworthy information to make sure that everyone is comfortable with the way that the transaction was going to occur and pan out really made the difference. And I think from the feedback we gave, but also from our suppliers' feedback, the transaction took less than 2 hours for everyone to sign, and the funds were paid within the day, which is unheard of in a traditional bill of exchange sense. And again, that was really down to trusting everyone in the chain. So yeah, the opportunities really that we see are as an SME is to push the boundaries a bit in terms of the digitization, and in terms of moving to Geraldina mentioned AI. We've just made an investment in a similar company that Geraldina made in terms of ERP software that focuses heavily on AI, because we believe that is what the future is going to be. It's about being efficient as an SME, to be profitable, and to also to ensure that whatever we do, we're minimizing or reducing our risks wherever possible. So we embrace trade digitization, and we think that new generations really are going to be more and more using these tools, because they already use them in everyday life. So there should be no worry, as long as everyone in the chain is trustworthy, and then we're big champions for these changes.
Okay, and Luca, how are you? How are the discussions going on with your buyers and your suppliers in terms of you being that disruptor and the advocate of the change? Yeah, because sometimes there's that resistance to change, right? You might find parts of your supply chain that are willing to go on that journey with you, but you can find others that are just we're okay, thanks, we're profitable at the moment, our systems work, we've got control. Maybe there's a management team that it's probably in the last 5 years of their roles and don't really want to do too much to rock the boat. How do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest challenges we have, and we're constantly pushing customers and suppliers to try and adopt these changes. And we understand it's there's a lot of hurdles to go through, especially because we deal with larger multinationals or very large corporates, and there are many layers of bureaucracy that you have to go through, and to explain to a company in Georgia what an electronic bill of exchange is, and to have it signed by electronically, it is a challenge, and undoubtedly that is a hurdle. But I don't have to go as far as Georgia. I can go and look at customers in the UK that are very, very large traders or consumers in the UK who very, very reluctantly will move away from paying you by check, which is a very...
Yeah, I actually saw one of those the other day, Luca. I was stunned. Somebody tried to pay some fees in a golf club up in Cumbria with a check. I said, "What is that you've got there? A check?"
Exactly. So we're talking about the other end of the scale in terms of trade non-digitization. And I think you hit the nail on the head. Sometimes people are comfortable with how things are, and change is hard, and you have to find the right person who wants to make that change. And for us, it's persistence and showing that the system worked, that the case, proving that the case has worked, proving that we've done this before and it's absolutely safe. But it is definitely not just a challenge globally, but even in the UK, unfortunately. So it's our role as an SME to speak to other SMEs, but to speak to other corporates and explain and show them that, look, change is coming. So we better embrace it now. That's really,
yeah,
I guess, a summary of it.
Right. Okay. Thanks, Luca. I mean, I'll come on to what the role banks have in this process as well, which is quite important. And I think David mentioned at the start, they're sort of trusted advisors, where it's accountants, lawyers, bankers, etc. But there's a lot more. And this is the key here, is that this whole ecosystem has to be almost in lockstep to try and get us some change. So, Kate, you represent hundreds of thousands of businesses across the UK, and I'm sure you're connected with other like-minded membership organisations globally as well. So, what are your membership sort of what's the ground roots noise, and do you think they're ready? Do you think they see the benefits?
Thanks, Mark. I think we talked a little bit about real world examples, and I promise not to bring out too many stats, but from surveying our membership, when we asked businesses who told us that they'd stopped trading, 56% of them said it's because of the excessive paperwork. We know documentation overload is a thing. And, when you bear in mind that small firms, by definition, they don't have a lot of people, so they very rarely have dedicated teams to deal with trades, let alone anything else. Just 1 in 10 of our members say they've got a dedicated staff member or a team to handle trade and customs. So the cumulative impact of the time spent on filling in paperwork is really important and can make a significant difference to small business and how much they want to engage with trade. It also has an impact on the process itself. And I remember hearing at a previous ICC event, and with apologies to this business because I've used this example so many times, an ICC member was talking about a shipment of mangoes which had arrived in port in the UK, but the paperwork was about a week behind. And so, the time is not just around the paperwork, it goes much beyond that. So there are huge time inefficiency savings that can be seen by small businesses that will have a very real impact on their day-to-day. I think what we need to, when I say we, I mean we at FSB, the government, and everyone else sort of involved in the ecosystem needs to also bear in mind is that if we think that trade can sometimes be difficult, daunting, digital can also be difficult and daunting. And then when you've got the two together, every SME is different, but there is quite often when we speak to our members a bit of a knee-jerk reaction to say, well, that's not for me, that's for big businesses, I don't have the time, I don't have the skills to get involved with that. So it's incumbent on us to really bring to life those benefits, and we can do that through case studies, peer-to-peer learning, through government support, but the communication, I think, is really important. I'd also say that it's part of a broader conversation, not just about the cost of trade, but about the whole policy environment in the UK. We know that small businesses tell us they're not always confident in their digital skills. Businesses, particularly in rural areas, struggle with even getting online. So it's, you know, there isn't one silver bullet to crack this, but when you take a step back and sort of look at the holistic environment, there are lots and lots of things that we can do to make it easy for small businesses and less daunting.
Yeah, totally agree with all of that, Kate. So, you know, particularly this piece, I referenced the skills piece earlier, you know, that, and we'll come back to it, I'm sure, in the conversation. But, you know, even in the big organization, I can tell you in my own organization, we've got a massive program of, you know, upskilling all of our people with digital skills. Yeah, because we've had, you know, you might think out there that the banks have all got these wondrous sort of skills. Well, we've got some people with them, but actually we need to change a whole raft of skill sets of individuals across our organization to be fit for the new world, right, and to be fit for the changing world. And I think it was Geraldina talked about data as well. You know, big organizations are not necessarily good with data. Yeah, they've got lots of it, but they're not very good at managing it, right, or using it. And you know, hopefully the changes that are coming forward as we're all getting to understand AI better will improve radically, and you'll find boards are starting to invest more money in the training development, and, you know, basically having a go at some of these things and seeing what use cases you can develop. And I certainly know it's happening mine, but the wider banking industry, I know it's happening, but there's a long way to go still. So last but no means least, let's get the context, because I am conscious that there's quite a bit of this has been UK sort of focus, but, you know, this is a global challenge, right? It's not just a UK challenge, it's absolutely a global challenge. We trade with each other around the world, and those supply chains are changing, as I referenced earlier, with some of the geopolitical challenges we have out there today, which don't look as though they're going to go away anytime soon. So, you know, the changes to supply chains and the development of different relationships cross-border and intra-border, indeed, is so key. So, Eric, what are you doing across Africa, and how are you making a difference?
Yeah, very interesting conversations from my colleagues here, and of course, a lot of similarities with the challenges that we face in our continent. Three things come to my mind as the first part of my perspective is, of course, access, availability, and use of digital technologies. For Africa, I think mobile tech has been one of the early or the best instrument that the continent has, with the continent having fairly decent levels of 3G networks, and currently I think at about 80%, and a fairly growing capacity on 4G and subsequent, because I think this is a very important backbone infrastructure to support small businesses, especially on access to internet. And some of the things that we have been trying to do, for instance, is foster partnerships between, say, mobile operators and businesses to be able to access either subsidized or connectivities that are targeted to different groups of businesses that are either small. For very, very small ones, what some of the things we are doing is to see, can they have access to these mobile gadgets through some credit arrangements, so that then they also have access to connectivity. We have initiatives in Rwanda, in Kenya, and Tanzania on digital skilling and financial inclusion, which is also very important. And most of the colleagues here have talked heavily on issues of skills and skills related to digital work. The second area that we are working on is the equation is double-sided. There's a public sector side, and of course, there's a private sector side. From the public sector side, you also have to be at par. We have, for instance, done a pilot between Kenya and the UK on the Trusted Trader Initiative, I think in 2022. And it was interesting to learn that there were still some digital milestones that HMRC needed to cover to be able to effectively support the private sector. And therefore, some of the things that we are doing in Africa is to work very closely with the customs in the countries that we work in, to enable them to be able to provide services to the private sector to trade better. So for instance, there's something we call the simplified trade regime in customs, where you have very simple trade processes that can actually be undertaken on the mobile phone to support small businesses, to do basic declarations for small consignments and things like that to be able to enable trade. So as we work in the continent, we work very closely with the government to enable them to be able to provide services. The other thing that I want to mention is we're also trying to see if we can leverage emerging technologies. I've talked about the UK-Kenya initiative, which is something we are doing under an initiative we call the Trade Logistics Information Pipeline. Basically, technology built on distributed ledger technology, trying to address one question that was raised by Luca, David, on issues around trust. How do you trust that an invoice is coming from the SME, from the originator of the consignment, that the bill of lading is original, that the certificate of origin is correct, and it's coming from the primary source? So we think there's opportunity to leverage such technologies to support small businesses to be able to participate in trade. I heard about the mangoes from Kate that arrived before the consignment. Kenya exports a lot of fresh produce to the UK and flowers to Netherlands and the whole of Europe. There's something that is called a blue envelope, and it goes on the plane. And sometimes the plane will land in Amsterdam or in Heathrow without the blue envelope that carries all the documentation for that consignment. So we hope that the adoption of digital documentation and using some of the initiatives that we are working on, like the TLIP initiative, where we work with, for instance, the Institute of Export in the UK and a few other global partners, to enable the support of businesses and knowing, for instance, the Africa-UK business, small businesses are the ones that are actually participating in supporting, for instance, the export of of fresh produce. Most of them are consolidated from small businesses. And then the last item that I want to speak about is payments. Payments, and it's interesting to hear that still checks are still flying, literally, in the trade space. It's not unique, but I think in Africa, one thing that has saved us big time is mobile money. That's such a big thing for us. And I think I'm one of those people who I can finish a whole month without working with cash. And I will not use my card either. I will definitely operate with my mobile money, from transactions worth $1 to transactions worth tens of dollars and even hundreds and thousands. So one of the things that we are doing in Trademark Africa is we are working on cross-border payments that are interoperable. We are looking at wallet-to-wallet payments. We are looking at mobile-to-wallet, bank-to-bank, and all those cross-exchanges. And we're trying to work, for instance, with regional organizations in Africa, like the East Africa Community, to ensure that there's a way that the private sector can be supported to trade better. The small businesses can be able to use their mobile money to move money across different services, whether it is banks, mobile wallets, to be able to enable their trade to thrive. So I'll leave it at that for now. And I'm sure
Eric, thank you. I think, you know, one of the common misconceptions about Africa is that, you know, they're not really digitized, but you know, in certain countries, you've actually leapfrogged the West in terms of how you use mobile, and you referenced that there about, you know, digital money, and you know, the mobile phone is everything to people there, right? In certain countries where you've really gone far above, certainly in the UK, but other Western economies. So you know, in some ways you're already ahead of the game, but obviously there are other, it's a big continent and there's lots of variations, right? But I think, thinking about some of the things we still need to do in the UK across this ecosystem is, our mobile infrastructure in the UK is not good enough. I think, as we probably all know, right? It's just not good enough. I live in Buckinghamshire. I can tell you half the county still doesn't have a good 5G signal, which in today's age is just not right. Yeah, you can have a better conversation to somebody in Singapore than you can have to Milton Keynes to London. Quite some. So it just shows you that the Western economies have still got work to do, and governments have still got a lot of work to do to drive some of our telecoms companies to get things better. So look, we've got about 8 minutes left, and as I said to the panel when we were just having a meet up and chat, we could have gone on for a long time and got into a lot more detail about certain areas, but time doesn't allow. But hopefully for all the people online, you've got some good connections now with various organizations and people that you can follow up if you like. But I'll just go through a couple of these Q&As and see if we can come across. The first one's a little bit focused, but maybe somebody wants to pick it up. I would like to focus the halal economy in UK and cross-border. If I could make any contribution, it's probably more as a statement than a question. I think, anybody want to comment on that? Otherwise, I will. Who's got their hand up? Eric, is that you?
Yeah. I think for me, it's just a contribution on what tech can support. I think it's a question of traceability, if I got the question right. There could be capabilities around traceability to support value chains, and whether it's small or medium size or big businesses around. How do you ensure that commodities actually meet the requirements of the market that wants to consume them? That's how I see it, and therefore there's an opportunity for small things like IoT gadgets, certification being verified and things like that can guarantee actually that the commodities have gone through the required compliance checks, and you can trace that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, my comment about the halal is sort of wider. Is we've got in the global ecosystem, we've got lots of sectors. We've got lots of different practices in different territories, countries, continents. So everything that we do around this digitalization agenda has got to be take notice of it. You can't have some just generic solution. You think everybody's going to get behind that. You've got to think specifically about sector. You've got to think specifically about geography. Hopefully, the tools that are developed and the technology that is developed is flexible enough to allow some customization, but the big principles need to stay the same. And the big legal support, like our Digital Bills Act in the UK, they need to be there to create the right framework. But you do need a level of customization across different sectors and different countries. So that will be my sort of general comment around that particular question. The next one comes from Ozel Kotas. How do you use digital tools in can't even say that word today, internationalization strategies such as export, franchising, license agreements? Anybody want to pick that one up from the panel?
I could have a go at it, Mark.
Thanks, Geraldina.
One of the things that I briefly mentioned is that we are recently launching our International Accelerator Program, which is focused on accelerating the adoption of digital technologies in trade and supporting the ITC in their ambition to make trade fully digital. Right now, we're working with BAE Systems, Leonardo, and BT to develop solutions that will test fully digital trade. And it will aim to prove that the current slow and manual process can reduce delays in cross-border shipping by 80%. That is one of our targets that we're trying to do to address. And the program has just started and will be opening to innovative tech solutions through an open call in May. So I would suggest, in order to be able to address that challenge, there is a number of different tools that we could look at. So it's a call out to be engaged in that accelerator program, to look at your challenges and to look at some of the digital solutions that will be coming, really focusing on digital trade.
Great, thanks, Geraldina. Very helpful. So there's a question about, is there a replay going to be available? I think the answer to that is definitely yes. And the ICC and Centre for Digital Trade and Innovation will make sure that that is available to people who've registered. But I suspect it will be available on their website at some point in the future. I'm guessing, but I suspect that's true. Nick's nodding sagely there, so I'm on safe ground, I think. John Taylor, can I understand the parties in the trade transactions who know and trust one another would like to use, e.g. electronic bill of exchange? How do we persuade such use by parties who do not know each other? So this is where trusted systems come in place, etc. So who would like to pick that up? Maybe David?
Sorry, I've missed that one.
So this is the John Taylor question. I can understand that parties in a trade transaction who know and trust one another would like to use, for example, a bill of exchange, electronic bill of exchange, but how do we persuade such use by parties who do not know each other? So it's this trusted element that we were talking about earlier, David, yeah?
Yeah, you've almost got to trust a trust-based system. So you've got to almost educate people that you can trust this in order to get them to trust it. And the only way of really doing that is by getting them to use it. And I think the only way you get them to use it is in a safe environment where they can see it working, whether that's in a sandbox type environment or whether it's a very low level, low risk trade. And then you build that trust and almost de-risk it. And I guess it goes back to, I was trying to cut in earlier on, fundamentally, this is all about change management. This is people. And we need to understand the psychology of how people think and operate, both with the current habitual, what we do now versus the new, even though we know the new is way better than the old, but we've got almost stuck in our ways. And the only way really of doing that is having people like me, people like everybody else in this call, but you in particular at the bank, showing people the way, showing that you can do transactions and you trust these transactions yourself, and helping people to build that trust up. But we also need to stop using, not so much stop using, but be careful on using terminology that baffles people is probably the right way of putting it. So DLT and blockchain to the average person on the street, it means absolutely not. But what you can do is explain.
Blockchain, interesting, David, probably has bad connotations to people, right? Because of the crypto stuff, which is something we've got to get over, right? So okay, so thank you. There's one, the last question I'm going to take is one that's addressed to Santander, so I better take it, otherwise I'll be in trouble. Says, do Santander take a digital bill as a document of title against security against a trade finance contract? Well, the starting point is a digital bill or any bill of exchange is not a document of title. A document of title is a bill of lading, yeah, as an example, and that only, not all bills are lading, right? But so the answer is no. But on a broader note, we like all the other banks are trialing, testing, looking at how we can get involved in using digital bills of lading, etc., in our propositions, and how we create rails, if you like, networks that we can start using the legal framework that we now have to move forward. But it's not going to happen overnight, right? It's just going to, we're all working on it, but it's going to take some time. So with that, I'm going to, we're exactly 3 o'clock. But as I said earlier, we could have gone on for a long time with the quality of the panel here and the agenda. So I'd like to thank Geraldina, David, Kate, Luca, and Eric most sincerely for what I hope for everybody was a good, informative, and insightful session. It's been a lot of fun, very thought-provoking for me, even as a moderator. So appreciate it all. And with that, I'm going to hand back to Nick.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. And also thank you very much indeed to our panelists for their interesting input and discussion. For me, there are a couple of major things there. public-private partnership. We've got to work together on this, and we've got to leverage the representative bodies that we have at our disposal. Kate's to the fore, but others like the British Chambers of Commerce and the International Chambers of Commerce, of course. Payments, I think, is critical. Cash flow is a really important thing for small businesses. If we can speed up the terms of settlement, that's also a good thing. And also, Luca's example stands as a great one. Sometimes you can get more innovation out of an SME because they are smaller, more agile, and capable of making decisions much more rapidly than, if you'll forgive me, Mark, larger organisations like a bank, particularly with the regulatory constraints that operate there. And as David has said, and indeed others have reflected, trust by an SME in their other members of their supply chain is critical. Get them to trust the system, then I think they will be able to use that to contract with others that they may not necessarily have other reasons to trust. So thank you very much indeed for that. That's been an extremely useful session. The SME sector is massively important to us, and we will not forget that as we look to digitalise the international process. Thanks again. We look forward to seeing those of you who are coming along tomorrow, where we'll be going into further this in more detail. But in the meantime, thank you very much indeed for your time and attention. Thanks indeed to our panelists and to Mark for hosting, and we look forward to seeing you again tomorrow. All the best. Thank you very much. Bye.